Hello everyone. In my last video, I talked about October being Bully Awareness Month and the issue that went along with it, next month's election, where we've seen some bullying by one of the candidates. I hope you can remember who and remember that for November 8th. Next, I want to bring in that vocabulary word that we had last time and discuss bad behavior. Do you remember what vocabulary it was? Empathy. Teens' bad behavior result of bad parenting? No, you didn't see a question mark there, but I put one there because you may notice this article was written by John Rosemond of the Hartford Courant, and I have always had an issue with the things that he has been writing about throughout the ages. John's hypothesis is that their biology does not make them do these terrible acts of petulance, moodiness, disrespecting authority, and otherwise horrid behaviors. But in a Wall Street Journal article from October 16th of that year, 2013, the developmental psychology stated that the brain regions that support social cognition, those that support development of empathy, continue to change dramatically during the teen years. So that means that they're not fully developed. We've already stated in previous videos that the brain is not fully developed until age 25, but most of the adult, meaning 18 and older, brain development happens in the frontal lobe. That part is responsible for reasoning and logic, whereas the part in the article talks about social cognition, empathy, that's developed in the teen years. And so the teens that enter into their teen years with well-developed empathy do not bully other children. And that's what John says. It makes sense. Now the part that I disagree with, where he is stating about his own bringing up and other cultures like children, teens in Africa. Do they have the same habits of closing their doors and secluding themselves from their parents, having these moody attitudes? No, I guess not. And back in the 1950s, no, teens did not have such the same attitudes. At the end of John's article, it talks about teens who are self-dramatic, disrespectful, and lacking empathy are the product of precisely what the study's authors say they are not. Homes in which they have been pampered, spoiled, entitled, and told that they're the only people on the planet who really matter. Well, John, I believe that it's a combination of biology and sociology that led our children and students to act this way. And to nip it in the bud, we don't just need positive behavior systems, but we also need to look at their biology and understand that this is the way they are because of these biological impediments. Let's move on to the next article. Frank Harris, the author of this article, Toughness Training, Key Part of Growing Up, is another one of those authors that I have issues with from time to time. He seems like he has some good ideas, but they don't flesh themselves out because of the way he approaches them. In the beginning of the article, he turned me off when he talked about stress as being relative and how the things in kids' lives right now shouldn't be considered stressful. That reminds me of that video that I showed you last video of empathy, where it describes sympathy. Let me show you what I mean.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with "at least." Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage.
Bringing it back into the article, Frank Harris made some connections between what students feel and the hypotheticals of stress when you're at war and being shot at, stress when you're running into a burning building to save lives. And he kind of put that silver lining around it, saying, even in these more stressful situations, the proper word for stress should be challenge. And these challenges should be something to live for and to meet, not to die at one's own hands over defeat. So I get it, he's trying to stave off suicide attempts, but that's not what we're saying. We need to say, hey, you're feeling something. It's important that you're feeling it. Now, overcome it. Don't belittle somebody else's feelings just because you think that there are other things out there to be more stressed or more upset about. Give them validation and then help them to overcome these challenges. Do you hear what I'm saying, Frank? And everybody else out there? Then we've got his suggestion from the title of the article that we need to grow up in a society where there's toughness training. And it could be in college, he's saying, because at the time the article was written, kids were committing suicide because of bullying, online bullying or otherwise. And his final statement, his thesis, if you will, is life is not always good, but it can be. I'd like to leave it at that because maybe toughness training is good. Maybe we need some sort of tough exterior, but I live by the belief that life's not always good, but maybe it can be. Maybe we shouldn't put that hard chocolate shell around the M&M of our lives. Maybe we just need a kiss. Speaking of toughness training, Carolyn O'Loughlin, who is the Director of Residence Life at Sarah Lawrence College, wrote an article December 29, 2013, about what she calls snowplow parents and how they overexert themselves in the best interest of their children with good intention, but it may not be actually the best for their child. So she calls snowplow parents those that are like hovering parents, but they also plow ahead to preemptively eliminate any obstacle from their child's path, whether it be talking to a coach about extra playtime or talking to a teacher about a little more attention to their struggling student. I like how later on, after she says her personal experience with this, she goes on to state that the everyday obstacles and learning in college or whatever, conflict, disappointment, discomfort are messy and necessary. Development of confidence and competence requires the ability to deal with adversity. When well-intentioned parents, through obstacles, they often bury their child's ability to clear the next path. And I kind of had a connection to last season's American Crime story because this parent was very much a snowplow parent in her ruthless pursuit to save the day for her child. Now, the issue with her child was serious and it did need parental attention, but to the effect of her child having such a negative experience from her involvement and the private school that he was enrolled in and everything else, it just blew it out of proportion and didn't really let the main character, the student, plow through that path on his own. She should have been more of a listening board. If you really want to learn more about that story, I highly suggest watching last season's installment of American Crime Story. Some takeaways that I want you to have from this video are: you should always empathize. Try not to sympathize with people. But if you do sympathize, avoid things like "at least" statements because you saw that video. No matter what you call it, stress or challenge, it's still a feeling that a person has. So please don't belittle it and just be there for them. For parents and outsiders, let the other people work things out for themselves. Don't hover and definitely don't plow through for them. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. And if you did like it, please hit that like button down below and subscribe. And don't forget to put your comments down below. Thank you.